Future Trends is brought to you by the Institute for Economics and Peace.
Welcome to the latest edition of Future Trends, the weekly briefing on the changing face of global politics, economics, development, social and conflict. Here's this week's headline stories. What China fears most about Trump's turn toward Russia. German conservative bloc claims election victory. UN says Rwanda-backed rebels in Congo are killing and recruiting children. Europeans no longer living longer. And giant sloths lived with humans for millennia. Here's the latest news in politics. EU reaffirms support for Zelensky. There has support across Europe for Zelensky's legitimacy as Ukraine's leader after US President Trump called him a dictator. The EU also have reiterated that both they and Ukraine should have a seat at the negotiating table, while Zelensky offered to resign in exchange for peace and NATO membership for Ukraine. France hands over its Port-Bouet military base to Ivory Coast. Ivory Coast officially took control of Port-Bouet, the last remaining French military base in the country. France has been present in Ivory Coast for decades, but the handover comes as the majority of its forces leave countries across West Africa. What China fears most about Trump's turn toward Russia. The breakneck turn of events is seen to be raising questions about how the US peace drive will impact China's partnership with Russia and China's relations with the Trump administration. China is worried that once Russia and the US patch up their differences and achieve some degree of peace in Ukraine, that would free the Trump administration to turn its focus to China. German conservative bloc claims election victory. Opposition conservative bloc of the CDU and CSU parties won Germany's parliamentary election, with the far-right AfD coming second, doubling its support in just 4 years to almost 21%. It puts Friedrich Merz, a pro-NATO economic liberal, in the seat to become the country's next chancellor. Niger Commission recommends 5-year transition period to civilian rule. Back in 2023, when the military seized power ousting Mohamed Bazoum, the ruling junta suggested 3 years for the transition back to civilian rule, which ECOWAS rejected. It is now increased that to 5 years. Niger, Mali and Burkina Faso left the bloc after political disagreements. Now for updates in conflict. UN says Rwanda-backed rebels in DRC killing and recruiting children. The M23 rebels have also been accused of attacking hospitals and warehouses, storing humanitarian aid in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, as troops loyal to the government retreat from key cities. The rebels have captured 2 key cities in DRC's mineral-rich east in less than a month, after a major escalation in their fight against overstretched Congolese forces. Fragile ceasefire in Gaza faces a key deadline. The first phase of the ceasefire that paused 15 months of war between Israel and Hamas militants is set to end, and it's unclear what comes next. The two sides were supposed to start negotiating a second phase weeks ago, in which Hamas would release all the remaining hostages from its October 7, 2023 attack, which triggered the war in exchange for more Palestinian prisoners, a lasting ceasefire, and a full Israeli withdrawal from the Gaza Strip. But those negotiations have not begun, and the first phase has been jolted by several disputes. Meanwhile, Israel has received a shipment of US-made Mk-84 bombs after President Trump lifted an export block on the weapons. The Biden administration stopped shipping the large 2,000-pound bombs to Israel, conceding they were causing civilian deaths in Gaza, as they are designed to penetrate hardened, deeply buried underground targets. Severe blow to Sinaloa cartel as security chief of El Chapo's son arrested. He was captured just hours after the US added the Sinaloa cartel to its list of foreign terrorist organizations, or FTOs, a move which the Trump administration says will allow it to better combat the criminal groups. The US also designated 7 other Latin American crime groups as FTOs: Jalisco New Generation Cartel, Gulf Cartel, Northeast Cartel, United Cartel, New Michoacan Family, all from Mexico, plus Venezuela-based Tren de Aragua and MS-13 from El Salvador. Mexican President Sheinbaum said she will propose constitutional reforms aimed at protecting Mexico's sovereignty. Switching now to economics. How much does each country spend on its military? The US, the largest military spender in the world, allocates $880 billion to its defense, more than the next 8 countries combined. Global military spending hit $2.44 trillion in 2023, or $306 per person, marking a 6.8% increase from the previous year. Where is DOGE cutting funding from US budget? The aim is to have a sustainable budget deficit with multiple government agencies affected. USAID has been shut down, and only some hundreds of staff are likely to remain. The Department of Defense has been told to cut its budget 8% every year till 2030, while the Education Department has had billions of contracts cancelled. Hundreds of employees from the nuclear defense program were fired. 2 million federal employees were offered redundancies, and everyone at spy agency, the CIA, has been offered the change to resign. Congo emerges as China's strategic copper supplier. China is reaping the rewards of its massive mining investment in the Democratic Republic of Congo in the form of surging imports of physical copper. European stocks outpace Wall Street since Trump took office. The surprise outperformance has been driven by lack of day-one tariffs on EU and prospect of end to Ukraine war. Moving to stories in development. Australia and New Zealand monitor unusual movement of Chinese warships. 3 Chinese Navy ships have charted a course along Australia's eastern coast in a move described as unusual by the country's defence minister. World's glaciers melting faster than ever due to climate change. Mountain glaciers, or rivers of frozen ice, act as a freshwater resource for millions of people worldwide and lock up enough water to raise global sea levels by 32 centimetres if they melted entirely. But since the turn of the century, they have lost more than 6,500 billion tonnes, or 5% of their ice. The Ugandan Arts Centre bringing harmony to Africa's biggest refugee camp. The Bidi Bidi Performing Arts venue offers more than 250,000 refugees the chance to sing, play, dance, and dream of a peaceful future. New Indonesia Sovereign Wealth Fund to invest $20 billion. The fund will invest in nickel, bauxite, and copper processing, AI and renewables, President Prabowo said. Danantara Indonesia is expected to manage more than $900 billion worth of assets to help drive development in Southeast Asia's largest economy and fulfill Prabowo's promise of boosting growth to 8%, from about 5% now. Europeans no longer living longer. The rise in human life expectancy has slowed down across Europe since 2011. A new study found the food we eat, physical inactivity and obesity are largely to blame, as well as the COVID pandemic. Of all the countries studied, England experienced the biggest slowdown in life expectancy. Finally, the latest news in social. First pharaoh's tomb found in Egypt since Tutankhamun's. Archaeologists have found the last undiscovered royal tomb of the 18th Egyptian dynasty, that of King Thutmose II. The British-Egyptian team located it in the western valleys of the Theban necropolis near the city of Luxor. AI cracks superbug problem in 2 days that took scientists years. Researchers from Imperial College in London had spent years working out and proving why some superbugs are immune to antibiotics. They gave an AI tool a short prompt asking it about, and it reached the same conclusion in 48 hours. Mauritius ex-PM arrested for money laundering. Mauritius's former Prime Minister Jugnauth has been released on bail following his dramatic arrest on money laundering charges. He had been detained along with 3 others after the anti-corruption agency said it had seized suitcases of cash and luxury watches in raids on 10 locations, including Jugnauth's home. Giant sloths and mastodons lived with humans for millennia. Scientists had believed the first humans to arrive in the Americas soon killed off giant ground sloths through hunting, along with many other massive animals like mastodons, saber-toothed cats, and dire wolves that once roamed North and South America. But new research suggests that people came to the Americas earlier than thought, and may have spent millennia sharing prehistoric savannas and wetlands with enormous beasts. Underwater drones to help artificial reefs restore sea life. A swarm of small, independent submersibles will be used to monitor, protect, and provide data on offshore artificial reefs in Cyprus, whose purpose is to attract new marine life in otherwise barren sections of sea. Underwater drones can loiter underwater for up to a month and provide a continuous flow of data, while alerting scientists to any disturbance in protected waters from illegal fishing and encroaching boats.
Future Trends is brought to you by the Institute for Economics and Peace.